one, go.
Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. With me from the Florida Prospects Report and doing some work with us at PressBox now is Eric Garfield down south. And Eric, with the not shocking news, I mean, we knew that Jackson Holliday wasn't going to spend 60 or 90 days down with Norfolk, but it kind of hit us pretty suddenly after only 10 or 11 games.
Yep.
Just a quick question, and I want your opinion on this.
Okay.
Had the Orioles been 10-1 like the Yankees, and Hayes and Mullins were performing at a higher level, do you think this would have happened as quickly?
As quickly, probably not, but it would have been really close to this date anyway. So maybe 2 more weeks maximum for Holiday and the minors.
Yeah.
I think they had like metrics, thresholds that he needed to show. Start hitting the ball harder consistently. I don't think there's any irony lost that the night he got called up, his double was 107 miles an hour into the right field corner. So
Yeah.
there's proof right there.
All right. And speaking of exit velocities, what about Jordan Westberg? Did you see him having this kind of power? Now, hitting one long ball, I mean, amazing. It was 435 feet. Virtually nobody hits home runs to center field in Fenway. Um, does that mean that he's got 30 plus power, 30 plus home run power, or pump the brakes? One long one doesn't mean he's going to be prolific at home runs, but he's a 15 to 20, 18 to 20.
I think he's somewhere in between, probably closer to 30 than we believe.
Okay.
I guess my best estimate would be 525 plate appearances. He'd hit about 25, 26, 27 taters, which isn't 30, but it's
Oh, but
really close.
it's
And
real
it, and
close.
if he times them well and wins games with them, we're not going to care what the total sum is. We're just going to care about the result and how clutch he is. So
Yeah.
Westberg's a hitter with some serious pop. I mean, he's
Yeah.
not a low draft pick. He's a relatively high draft pick.
Well, he's a compensatory. I mean, competitive balance pick. He was picked
Yep.
number 30 in 2020.
Yep.
But he was I won't call him risky, but he was definitely not a guy I think that profiled that high. But Sig and Mike really saw something in this guy, and I think they took a little bit of a flyer on him and said, "Let's do this."
I totally agree with that very much. I don't think he would have gotten picked by other teams around where he was selected by the Orioles. Kind of like when the Ravens were late in the draft one year and they took a guard. They took Ben Grubbs. Not
Yeah.
exciting, not pedigree, but this guy's going to get the job done and maybe for quite a long time at a decent and affordable pay rate. I think that really describes Westberg's profile. And, he's off to a good start.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, you and I talk briefly each week about what we're going to talk about, and obviously, we've been hearing for 4 months that we've been hearing for 4 months. I apologize, somebody's calling me right now. We've been hearing for 4 months. Jackson Holliday's number one prospect in baseball. Now he's up. Now I know. Looking at the MLB.com, they've got Holiday 1, Jackson Chario of Milwaukee 2,
Awesome player.
Evan Carter
Oof.
5, Langford 6, both with the Texas Rangers. So you can still have the ranking even though you've gone to the major leagues. How long can Jackson Holiday remain the number one prospect in baseball?
I don't think there's an actual like stringent dictionary definition for
So
prospect.
it's
I
not
know.
like it's not like a qualifying for rookie of the year that you got to be, you have to be in the majors for 30 days consecutive or something, and then you won't be number one prospect.
I,
It just seems funny to me, Eric, that Evan Carter, who we saw star in the World Series, is still ranked number 5 prospect in baseball.
Right. And he is a great player. There's a part of me that's just like, why do we have to call him that? He's in the population of major league
Yeah,
players. I think that the rookie eligibility is 130 at bats, 50 innings if you're a pitcher,
yeah.
45 days on the roster. But I don't think that
That doesn't
aligns
cross
with
over to
prospect
the that
definition.
doesn't cross over to this where
No.
once Jackson Holliday reaches 130 at bats, he's no longer qualified to be the number one prospect.
Correct. And there's also different evaluators. There's Fangraphs, there's Pipeline, there's Keith Law and the Athletics. So
Yeah,
whatever everyone's standard is, it is certainly not uniform. But we can look at these guys and just say relatively low experience, even if they're in the major leagues. The
gotcha.
Angels drafted Nolan Shanuel. They kind of put him right up. Some people
Yeah,
call him a prospect. Some people call him a major league corner. So I
yeah.
guess it just depends on how you look at it and how you evaluate it.
Hey, what are the odds that three of the top prospects in baseball, whichever metric or grading system you want to use, you got Jackson Holliday, Jackson Chario, and Jackson Merrill. What are the odds of three Jacksons being three of the top five, rookies in baseball this year?
I'd say they're very low, but if you look at what babies are named in America, the overall Jackson rate is
Is pretty high.
climbing.
Yeah. It has been
So,
climbing for about 10, 15 years, I think. Yeah.
right, there's a lot of Jacksons overall. Like there's a lot of Camdens in Baltimore, and
Right.
there's going to be a lot of Adleys, but overall, there are a lot of Jacksons. So I think that's what it's reflective of. By the way, all three Jacksons are amazing baseball players, primed for superstardom.
Yeah. Jackson Merrill, of course, from Maryland, played, I think, at
Severna Park.
Severna Park, right. And he's ranked, according to MLB.com, he's ranked at number 12, but
Okay.
he's up. Some of this has to do with like Heston Kjerstad's ranked number 30, but the Orioles don't need him right now. There's no
Yep.
room for him right this minute. So it's kind of frustrating for some of these people. So
Yep.
chance is going to play a little bit of a role in whether who's called up and who isn't called up.
Opportunity is most certainly a factor in evaluating these guys. Yeah.
All right. So the question is, if you had to say when the dice are cleared or back in the thing to shake them up, who will be mid-season this year? Let's say June 15th to July 15th. Who will MLB.com or Keith Laws, who will be the number one prospect in all of baseball? And I know
For
there's probably realistically about 8 to 10 candidates, aren't there?
that is an accurate number. There's not a lot. It's a handful, but I consider it a large handful. Junior Caminero, his injury might take him out of the running. I would
He's
put
a
him there.
he's a third base, second baseman with the Tampa Bay Rays playing at Durham, but he's hurt right
Yep.
now. Yep.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. I think he would have had a good, strong shot at it just based on how I expected his season to go and progress.
Right.
But he's out of the picture temporarily, and that's going to make it a lot easier for Paul Skeens, the Pirates' number one pitcher that they drafted last year from LSU. He's just, his appearances are really kind of brief, and I consider him major league talent right now. So he's just going to dominate, even though he's in AAA. If you're asking this guy to throw 30 pitches every 5 or 6 days, they're going to be an amazing 30 pitches. So he's going to have a very high strikeout rate, very low contact metrics, and not a lot of runs given up
Yep.
or rally type innings. So I
So
think
far, so far, I
it's going
heard
to
it
be him.
today, Eric. He's started twice. He's pitched 3 innings both times, hasn't allowed a run. I think he's allowed one hit and struck out 11 or something close to that.
His numbers are going to be very reflective of that, dominant with a lot of strikeouts per inning, per appearance, per whatever you want to put as the denominator. But even if all the hitters that we discuss or are in that 8 to 10 group do their best, it's not going to be as good as Skeens doing his best. We talked about opportunity. The Pirates continue to show that they're contenders, or at the very least fringe contenders.
Yeah.
his opportunity might shoot him up. So that could play a part in him getting that number one, but maybe not holding it long term.
Okay. Um, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means. Do you think there's an almost a need? And so I'm not saying MLB.com would do it or what, but that there's almost a need for a pitcher to be number one again. I mean, it just seems like with the way injuries are going now and everything like that, it's almost, Luke Jackson brings it up to me sometimes. He goes, they're going to treat pitchers like running backs in football. They're just going to use them up, no long-term contracts, use them up, move on to the next, live arm.
Luke is, we know him to be a reasonable man, and I think that's very, very close to correct. If you pay attention to prospect rankings over the years, the ones who are the best pitchers, the most projectable pitchers,
Yep.
the ones with the best draft pedigree, they don't get into the top 10 normally. So that says something about Luke's theory, but it also, on the other hand, says something about Skeens. Skeens is better in 2024 than a lot of other previous names were
I would
in
agree
other
with that.
previous years. So it kind of separates him a little bit. I don't think there's a conspiracy at all or a need to do that, but Skeens really is showing to be that high level,
He,
that
he
good.
he is a level above, but I think it has again to do with Mike Elias, we would agree, and Sig are both really sharp guys when it comes to this draft. They understand it, they understand the risks associated. And I wrote a column today that they're to be saluted last night just as much as Jackson Holliday because this was the team that they put together with five guys in it, that
Amazing.
they drafted. It's pretty amazing. But my point is the risk adversity, Mike Elias has been risk adverse with taking pitchers high in the draft because of the risk. And I think that's why when you start projecting who's number one, the top 100, there's probably less pitchers today because of that risk factor than there were, say, 10, 15 years ago. If you would have said, who are the top 100 prospects? I think baseball would have had a lot more pitchers, starting pitchers in that group.
I think that's extremely reasonable and a reflection of how one of the ways that baseball has changed. Another thing in ranking pitchers, a lot of time, this is a massive several thousand population in the minors. A lot of times, someone like Edgar Portes, who you and I saw at Aberdeen, they just kind of come out of nowhere, and their time in the minors is spent developing very fast and almost getting to a level of dominance. Well, then you're like 2 or 3 years behind on ranking them. That profile, no matter how good they do, is never going to get to 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. It's going to have a ceiling because of where it started. Like the guy Ronel Blanco on
Right.
Houston, proving to be a great pitcher. His minor league stats are pretty good if you look back. Even though it was a brief time, it showed a lot of development. He was never ranked anywhere. So,
Yeah.
but the pitchers have kind of a hard time getting ranked unless they are a high pick in the right organization, are promoted like on social media and in actual media. So it's always going to be a big uphill climb for a pitcher.
And because there's so many injuries in front of them, they're less likely to stay on the linear line of development. They're often needed pretty quickly in an emergency situation.
If they're proving to be that good, they're
Yeah.
not right. They're not going to have time. Also, what if a guy is good in the low minors and he's a starter, and then by the time he projects upwards high minors, his team wants him as a reliever?
Yeah.
Ranking services do not want to get burned and look stupid, so they're very hesitant to give pitchers that fluff again. But look at where Skeens is. He doesn't need that fluff. He throws 102 miles an hour.
Let me tell folks a little bit about who brings us each and every week, brings us these podcasts. What company makes your home more energy efficient, purifies your air, kills all viruses, and qualifies you for a $6,000 in rebates That would be AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com. We are also brought to you by Atman's, the new Atman's. If you're craving that classic New York deli experience, look no further than the new Atman's Deli in Baltimore's Harbor Point. Corned beef piled high, hand rolled bagels, and something different. A bar. That's
Oh.
right. Atman's has food and drink specials every day. They're now open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dine in, grab takeout, or hang out at our bar for the next O's game. That could be tomorrow night, could be tonight if the weather permits up in Boston. You can stop by there, have a great deli sandwich, a pickle with it, and also drink your favorite libation. It's an authentic taste of Baltimore tradition since 1950. Find us at Harbor Point or visit atmansdeli.com. We're excited to have them on board. We're also brought to you by the Costas Inn, and we
Mm,
will tell you a little bit more about the Costas Inn before we get off the air. Eric, so let's get back to the question. You brought up the name Paul Skeens.
mm.
If you're looking at June 1st, June 15th, you think he's the number one prospect? And who are some of the other contenders there? Give me a list of six or seven.
I do think it's going to be him. I do think the two that you mentioned from Texas are brilliant players. They've done nothing wrong. They've shown a lot of skill. Their slumps are short, but it's kind of
But
like when
I'm
we got
but
Adley and
I'm
Gunner
assuming
together.
I'm assuming they won't be on the list come June because they're going to be up regularly.
Carter,
Carter,
Carter
Carter, and
probably not. Langford maybe just for a little bit more time. Again, it's a reflection of his
I mean I'm
ability.
I'm
And
talking about Langford. He's been up 10 days longer than Jackson Holliday. And we're assuming Jackson
okay,
will be listed as top prospect in
so
June.
maybe okay, so maybe you're right. Both of them will be off. I think the players that I like the most
Yeah,
and
that's what I want to
are
hear
Walker Jenkins, the tall left-handed outfielder
for the Twins.
for
For
the
the Twins.
Twins. He's at low A right now. Currently, an injury. I've checked out. It's not a major injury. It's not something that should affect his season or anything like that. There's the teenage catcher, Ethan Salas, that was drafted by
San
the
Diego, right?
right. So kind of like depending on what you want or what you like, you might choose an advanced defensive profile. Uh, there's shortstop Arjun Nimala, who's a recent draft pick by the Blue Jays. He's got some work to do to climb, but he might be the best overall baseball player in the minor leagues.
He's the kid
There,
who's from India. He's from Indian
it,
descent.
yeah, his family's from India. He's actually from like 7 exits up from where I live right now in Florida. He's growing very fast, looks to
Yeah,
have amazing bat speed, amazing core strength. So he's not a big name on the prospect scene, but by June and by
he
the
will be.
autumn this year, he most certainly will be. But there's also two Red Sox guys that are semi exciting, again, depending on what you like. Shortstop Marcelo Myers, he's got like a Cal Ripken build as a young 20-year-old, so he might shift over to third. He doesn't seem to have that brilliant electric twitch, although he's a good first step at shortstop. And they have an outfielder who went to the same high school as Kobe Mayo, Roman
Roman
Anthony.
Anthony. Yeah.
He's developing extremely quickly. I've seen him in person a lot. He's got like adult type of metrics for a
And
young
how old is
prospect.
he? 18 or 19?
Anthony is 20 right now.
20 right
So
now.
he's but the Red Sox are very high on him.
I've
He's
heard I've heard amazing things about him. Yeah.
he actually, I believe, exit velocity wise, hits it just a twinge harder than Kobe Mayo. So, that's extremely hard for the
Yeah.
minor leagues. I expect him to have a team leader type season and be at the lowest, no matter what scouting service, 8, 9, or 10. So anyone who's in that range can kind of get up to the top. But overall, in terms of who's good at baseball, I'm going to say Walker Jenkins is the best guy. And also, don't discount Basayo. Basayo is he is in this range. He's in this pool. And depending on how his season goes, he could end up at number one. There's a large part of me that thinks he should end up as number one.
You and I were texting earlier, and you mentioned the name of James Wood.
Ooh.
What about him, and what about the other high draft pick by the Nats this past year, who I think is going to be in the majors quickly, Dylan Cruz?
Well, I've got divergent opinions.
Who do you like between the two of them?
Most certainly James Wood.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
I
seems like
think
a left-handed Aaron Judge to me.
right, but
Yeah.
he can move. Judge seems a little bit like overall thicker from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Wood's build is not like that. I don't think it's going to get like that. A little more slim, so he's got quickness, base to base quickness, and outfield range type of quickness. His strike zone is big, and his any issue in his profile is strike and strike zone related. I just don't think Cruz is going to make enough good, hard, consistent contact season to season to season to A, warrant his draft position, or B, outplay James Woods. So I'm not going to call him a bad draft pick, but I just think Woods is a superstar in the making, and Cruz is closer to a major league regular.
Okay. One of the things that populates this list of the top 30 out of the 100 that I wrote down to have in front of me is a ton of shortstops. I mean,
Yep.
you've got Marcelo Meyer, who I'm still pissed off that the Red Sox got that low a draft pick that year. I thought that the commissioner should have really done something different that year. That was the COVID year,
Yep.
where they finished in last place. And I think they gave up 30 games into the season. I think on a season of only 60 games, one of the best and richest organizations in baseball shouldn't have had a top five pick.
I
And
promise they took advantage of it because they had
yep,
a good
yep.
top to bottom draft, even though it wasn't that big. And right, Meyer's a good prospect.
So Myers a shortstop, Brooks Lee with the
Oh,
Twins is a shortstop, and
excellent
Colson
player.
Montgomery with the White Sox. And how about another guy? What's it? Carson Williams with Tampa Bay.
Yep,
That's
saw him a couple weeks ago.
four shortstops in the top 20.
And there's Jordan Lawler currently injured
That's
on Arizona. I like this list. I don't know if all those guys are going to stay at shortstop. I don't know who's
yeah,
going to be the best, but I think overall the one who's ranked there and probably shouldn't be is Carson Williams on the Rays. Good player, good baseball skills, good results, good execution, but never going to be big and strong to be able to drive and impact the ball. So again, a lot closer to a regular type because of physical limitations. But I really like Colson Montgomery, and I really like Jordan Lawler when he's healthy. And Brooks Lee, there was a lot of rumors before the draft that the Orioles were going to take him.
right.
I'd be absolutely fine with having Brooks Lee. He projects as a very, very good hitter. Remember
Yeah,
Michael Kadire on the
sure,
Twins?
sure.
That's what this guy's going to be like peak Michael Kadire, but maybe for an 8 to 10 year window. Excellent player.
When he's ready, because he can't be that far away, and they've got Royce Lewis, who I know is an injury problem. He got hurt in the first 3 or 4 games this year, and he's going
Yep.
to be out, I think, like 6 or 8 weeks, I think.
Yep.
But is Mayor Brooks Lee, does he move to third base, or how do they fit Carlos Correa and Brooks Lee in the same lineup?
Good question. From what I remember and what I've seen, Lee is actually a little bit better defensively, posture wise, transfer wise at
Mhm.
third. So maybe it'll work out in an ideal manner for them. But he's a prospect. He's coming. He's developing fast. So I have a feel. The Twins are a really smart organization
They
with
really are.
all aspects of development. So I think they're going to make the right choice when he's ready. They'll put him at third and bat him 5 times a game.
I want to ask you about two outfielders. And again, we're getting off the track a little who's number one, but I think you and I are in agreement that it's Skeens is the next number one guy.
For when they
Probably,
update, yeah, we are.
probably closely followed by the outfielder Walker Jenkins, you mentioned. But
Yep.
two other outfielders, one who's had a cup of coffee in the majors already is the Cubs' Pete Crow Armstrong and a Detroit Tiger youngster named Max Clark. What can you tell us about about the two of them.
All right, let's do the younger one first. I saw Clark last year in his debut. I was there for every game in the series. Gosh, it's he's going to be tough to project because he's extremely young. He has a football type build and he's not tall at all. I'd say his body type compares with like Mullins.
Uh-huh.
So right now, he's shown, like Mullins, an amazing ability to get to fly balls easily in the outfield. It's not an advanced skill, but
Hmm.
he's just a kid. Contact, swing, power, they didn't they didn't look great early, and the organization's already tinkering with him a lot. He's already had his third swing for getting drafted last year. So
Okay.
sometimes that doesn't help. It's hard to project him. I'm actually going to watch him again this weekend. He hasn't got off to the best start this year either. But again, he's so young. There's really no reason to count him out at all. But his climb's going to be an uphill climb. He's not a big dude.
Okay.
Uh,
And what about Pete Crow Armstrong?
Now he's someone totally different. When he was in the minors, I labeled him as defense only or
Right.
defense heavily over offense. And the more I see him, the more the teams that have developed him, the Mets and the Cubs, have kind of taken their hands off, just given him experience, let him grow from it. His on base profile is ticked up a little bit better. His power profile is ticked up a little bit better. So he looks like an everyday guy who might be at or right under the superstar level, a great get and a great developmental second half for the Cubs. So he's in my tier of actual impact player. Great arm, can get to every single ball and make acrobatic catches. People have been saying that about him since he was 15 years old. And a slightly above average hitter and a very advanced base runner. We're talking about a good player.
Okay. Now before we wrap this up, let me just get back to the Orioles for a minute. So if
Let's.
Holiday's up and we don't include him now, okay, because he's in the majors. Of the guys that are still down there, Basayo, who's not at AAA yet, he's a double A. Basayo, by the way, is he catching much so far this season?
I
Basayo?
don't. I don't. He has not caught at all. He's
Okay.
been.
So,
I don't even think he's played the field.
okay. So Basayo, Kobe Mayo, Kerstad, and then I'm going to throw the other two guys that aren't in the top 30, which are Connor Norby
And
and
Stowers,
and Stowers. Those five players, who's the best two of those five players?
the best two are Kobe and Basayo, and it's not going to change based on a hot April or a hot May. They have the highest upside when they're at their best. I see them as perennial all stars. Kobe's defense this season hasn't started out on the level that we're used to. It has not changed one thing about what I think about him. If he's not a third baseman, I still think very much that he is. He's going to have to prove that he isn't. It does not matter. He's hitting the ball 110 miles an hour at a rate that any organization would be successful with. I'm almost to the point where I think he'd be playing third for any other team except
Yeah.
the Orioles. So we're getting close to that breaking point of when are you going to actually start using him? So that is a major league skill on a minor league player. And Basayo, other than Kobe, is the most well-rounded player in the system. Power, average, desire, an outstanding backstop and thrower of the baseball. So he's not fast, but he's the closest thing to as valuable as a five-tool performer. So great question. For me, those two separate themselves from the pack.
Okay. And they're the two youngest of the five players. Mayo
What a
is 20,
coincidence.
yeah, yeah, okay. I mean, Heston now, not any fault of his own, is now over 25 years old, and Stowers is 26 already. So the clock's ticking for them. I want to finish up with one other Oriole that we
Yeah.
haven't mentioned here because he's not in on the top 100 list anymore, in my mind. Colton Cowser.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people been saying to fans that were upset with Austin Hayes, hey, pump your brakes. He was a regular on a 100-win team, and all of a sudden the team's not playing that great, and Austin certainly wasn't playing at his best level. And now Colton Cowser has nudged his way in. Does he end up stealing a lot of playing time from Austin Hayes because he'll bat against right-handers and Hayes could be relegated to a little bit more of DHing and playing against left-handed pitching?
I think that's we're watching that happen, and I have to
Yeah.
say that's an amazing transition. Austin Hayes was an all-star last year,
Yeah.
so regardless of what his stats or his counting stats are, to take that position at all says a hell of a lot about Colton Cowser, his upside, and what his employer thinks about him. Stan, how about those two catches in front of the wall in the eighth inning last night at Fenway
First
Park?
game he's ever played at Fenway Park. Yeah.
There's no part of me that says Austin Hayes could never do that, but Cowser's the one who has to prove who he is and that his resume is actual. So he needs to make those plays. He is doing it. So that is kind of a
And
scenario.
the one thing you see, Eric, with these young players too, is the fire. When he caught that first one, he was like really pumped that he had caught that ball.
As a fan, isn't that exactly what you want to see? We care about these guys, we care about their success, but we care about our team running off the field with a win or running out a successful inning after a defensive play. Right now, it's kind of like the best time in the last few years to be an Orioles fan. Number one system, the team is a contender, and the prospects are doing it. They're transitioning some of them upwards. So
Yeah.
I think
It's
Cowser's he's not the best overall, but he's the best current example. This guy is just kicking ass.
yeah.
We can use him in a lot of different roles all over the outfield. That's exactly what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
Awesome
very
player.
promising time. I wrote a piece today, by the way, if folks want to grab it. It's on pressboxonline.com, and it's a salute to Mike Elias and Sig Maydal. I'll leave, I left the Jackson Holliday debut story for everybody else. I thought the big story last night was how many players that Mike's drafted just in the last 3 or 4 years that are now integral parts of this team. You know,
Let's
it's
give him
fascinating.
credit.
Yeah, that's what they deserve. Hey, speaking of giving credit, the Costas Inn has steamed crabs ready for you, but you got to make a plan to get them. 410-477-1975. Call up, find out what their availability is, what size, their price point, so that when you want your crabs, you order them in advance because the days of on a Friday night or Saturday night, just stopping in and saying, hey, my group we want 3 dozen crabs. Don't know if they'll have them. I mean, they're going to have a lot of crabs this summer, and they have them all year round. But I just want to, again, alert you if you're really in the mood for steamed crabs, which the warm weather kind of brings out, you may want to
Mm.
call ahead 410-477-1975. Eric Garfield, many thanks. We'll talk next Thursday as well.
Look
Uh,
forward to it.
what's the date of next Thursday? That's
I believe it is
the
April
19th.
19th.
19th. Right.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. We'll be back on the air next Thursday. Eric and I, Ross, Luke, and I will be on Monday. Okay. That does it for now. And I'll be on the Glenn Clark show tomorrow from 10 to noon on PressBoxOnline.com. Bye for now.